Do you need encouragement to turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Purdue.
And again, it's that time of day for you to come in, relax, take your shoes off, come on in, drink that beverage, whatever your favorite beverage is. I'm not a coffee drinker per se, but I'll sure flood that coffee with some hazelnut creamer. All right. And so, come on in, enjoy, and let's learn. Let's find out how somebody's overcome adversity, and let's inspire, motivate, and help others in the future. Provide help for those that are struggling and need it. And there's someone out there, and maybe even you today. So today, our guest has had a brain tumor that should have taken his life, but thankfully it didn't. Surgery came. He got a new perspective in life. And so let's go on and get started here. And welcome to the show, Robert Towle.
All right. Thank you so much. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
No. Thank you for coming and sharing your valuable time with us and the listeners. And again, so we can help somebody else out there in the future.
Happy to be here. Absolutely.
Hey, we got Nancy in today again. Nancy, thank you for coming in. Robert, Nancy, Robert. So far.
Hi, Nancy.
All right.
There you
go. So, okay, Robert, now our show is again, we want to talk to people that's overcome adversity, and definitely with a brain tumor that should have taken your life. I think you qualify here, Robert, and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad everything went well, and you are here to help us. So if you want to go ahead and get started with your journey.
Sure. Absolutely. I appreciate it. So the surprise I got was March 1st of 2018. I awakened from a seizure in the middle of the night, and my wife of only 6 months, who happened to have been trained in how to care for people with seizures, was attending to me and woke up with a police officer at the foot of the bed, and had a seizure and was cognizant, aware at that point, a little confused, as you can imagine, of what was going on, and got me, but I managed to walk down the stairs, and with my cell phone in hand, as my cell phone addiction it's still not completely been broken. I'm doing better. Took my cell phone in hand and went into the ambulance, and they drove me. We lived a few miles away from the hospital. And within about an hour, they came out and went, well, we can't treat you here. They did the test, and they said, you've got a brain tumor, and this is a small regional hospital, and we can't treat you here. We got another ambulance that can come and take you. Make your choice of 3 hospitals of where you want to go. And I made the choice of the one in the closest vicinity, but in Roanoke, Virginia, and made the call to go to that one. And off I rode in the ambulance. And meanwhile, my wife had called my kids and called work and called my father and let him know. And he'd gotten down there to the hospital in about that much time. But he's an experienced military physician's assistant, about 40 years of experience in that. And they drove me off to the hospital. And then the miracles began happening, quite frankly. I thought I'd seen things and overcome things absolutely in my life, had overcome a lot, but nothing like this one. And it happened to be a doctor that he'd seen like 12 years before that was at the top of his game, was the neurosurgeon. And they looked at it. And the truth of the matter is this thing was about the size of a small apple in my frontal lobe. It was non-cancerous, but it was very, very large. And the images didn't look like a human brain. And they worked for a few days to try to reduce and cut off some of the blood supply to it. They actually the day before made an attempt to put me under. They did put me under, but lost me on the table in the attempt to cut off the blood supply. Got me back. Came back the next day for the surgery with that having failed, and with nothing but really the negative sides of things being brought up. You know, you could lose your memory, you could lose your eyesight, you could lose your hearing, all sorts of different things. And it became one of those. I didn't even look at the images at the time, to tell you the truth, the MRI, and just said, you know, what are the choices? Okay, I hear you on the bad side. What choice do we have? And they went, you don't really have a choice. And I went, all right, let's get on with it then. Let's do it. And they took me back for surgery. And you know, my not so funny joke is that I was unconscious during the worst parts of all this. It was my family that had to be awake. In my sister, her family, my dad, my wife's dad coming down, my kids coming in. They all had to be awake for it. I was unconscious. I woke up and was instantaneously better. A little bit grumpy, but better eyesight, better hearing, better hand-eye coordination, unbelievable results. And
Well,
I'll
that's
tell you
amazing.
what, it was amazing. It was truly amazing. To the point where I asked the docs, I'm like, this happens all the time? And they're like, when a miracle happens, you take it. And I'm like, I'll take it. I'm not arguing against it. Don't get me wrong.
When
But
you look a gift horse in the mouth. So
it was amazing. No rehab, no chemo, no chemicals, no medicines, no nothing. Was out of the hospital with about 6 days out of the hospital after brain surgery, where they opened me up from one side to the other. You know, looked a little battle weary, looked like I've been hit by a truck. But within a month, I was actually on an airplane traveling for work back again. Within about a week, I was working with limited screen time on the computer.
wow.
But it was just truly amazing. It's been very, very positive, and but definitely put a different perspective on life for me, no doubt.
Oh, I can imagine that, yeah, because now you're talking, we're going from your worst, what could be even worse than that, and but the miracle of being much better. I
Oh,
mean, much
indeed.
better. So, wow. Yeah, I'm like you. After my injury and everything like that, being in the wheelchair, that the only thing that I hate to say the word regret, but is my family had to go through it with me.
Hmm.
Like you said, here I am for my surgery, and they're all awake for it and everything. Yeah, but yeah, and they had to go through every step with you along the way,
Yes.
even though it's us personally, but
Yes,
they're there.
it's you wish you could spare them for that, but you're
Hmm.
glad to have them there. I felt bad for my youngest niece, who had never seen me without a beard, and they had to shave the beard after the bad incident the day before, so that they could have the right oxygen mask and everything on. And I thought she'd be horrified by what I looked like from the surgery. No, she was horrified with me without a beard,
There
is
you go.
what it was.
That's
So
right. That's right.
you feel
Now,
bad for the little things like that.
well, you tell them about the different perspective, right?
Yeah, exactly. I felt bad for her on that, and but the family being there to support was a good thing. It was you know, and even things that you get into. The only theory we have, not that you want to over theorize these types of situations, is that my mom was a musician and a pianist, and I played piano from the time I was 6 years old. And there are theories that your frontal lobe rewires itself due to the complexity of playing piano with 88 keys with two hands and your feet and everything else involved. And you sort of rewire the frontal lobe through all those years of practice, everyday practice. So that may have been a part of why I was functioning, because my dad afterwards, the docs afterwards, they said there was zero chance you were functioning before the seizure occurred on the 1st of March. But yet you were traveling the world, all over, flying on airplanes, going, and you were completely fine. Not a thing was wrong with you.
And
But
I don't
yet
play the piano.
something was really wrong.
Yeah, I don't play the piano. I know other people would do, but I could see that, multitasking, feet,
Hmm.
both hands, and rewiring your nerves up there to make everything work. And then once this area was damaged, it had already
Hmm.
been remapped years ago.
Exactly.
I could see that happening. Yes,
Yeah, that's the
I believe in
closest
this.
we've
I
come.
believe in the neurogenerations.
Yeah, it's something occurred, and I've definitely I inherited from my mom the musicianship, although not the skill that she had naturally. But every instrument I've ever picked up, I can play, and I can find a way to play, and that's many of them at this point. But none the complexity of the piano, which was the first instrument.
Growing up, my grandmother had a piano in her house. My mom played some piano, but thankfully she didn't push it on me as a kid because I don't know if I. But I remember going to my grandmother's house and I always practicing chopsticks. Dun dun
Yep.
dun dun dun
Oh.
dun. That's all I could do.
I would not have my hands if I'd played chopsticks. I don't know how to play them because my mom would not tolerate it. She was like,
There you go. Wise woman. Wise woman.
she was
So
very much very, very gifted, James. It turns out I only learned recently, and this is unfortunately after her passing, but I learned that she actually was playing at the church, and she would play professionally for her church, piano and organ, when she was 9 years old.
wow.
So she was very, very extraordinarily gifted. No doubt.
We were talking about a show just a minute ago. It sounds like your mother was exceptional
Yes,
in that
exceptional.
area. So that's amazing. And so I just interviewed a woman, Heather, that she was not quite born blind, but in the first couple of months went blind,
Hmm.
and she's a singer, and so she's talented in that area. She even mentioned it. She remembered she was 6 years old. She went to her brother. I asked to borrow $100 so she can cut her first record, and I'm thinking, who at six
Wow.
years old would think to cut a record,
I love
you
it.
know? And so here, so with your mother at 9 years old
Hmm.
playing professionally for the church, it's just remarkable to me. So people are amazing.
They
So
are.
they are people amazing. Now Robert, let's get to this now. I'm a firm believer that we go through some things in life to prepare us for what's coming ahead or
Hmm.
possibly could be coming. And so here you are talking about something went on, I guess, with your dad and the doctor then. 12
Hmm.
years later, you're with the same doctor.
Hmm.
And so whatever happened there, I think, again, meeting him, this one
Yeah,
man in your life,
it
and
was
then coming
extraordinary. This
full
man,
circle to come back.
and at the height of his game, and he sacrificed himself. He was going on a trip to visit his first granddaughter in Israel, and he stopped the trip to take care of me.
Yeah, so
Which he
that's a
didn't have to
great
do that.
dedication.
He
No, he
didn't
didn't.
have to
That's
do
great
that.
dedication. So there's quite a few that would have said, "I'm sorry, you can either postpone your surgery or I'll recommend someone."
Right.
And for them to be that dedicated with their profession, that's amazing as well. So all these pieces of puzzles are just falling into place
They
for
are.
you to be able to come up with your book. Let me get that book up here. You can flash yours while I'm pulling it back up. There it is. Never mind.
Okay.
Don't be dumb. And I can't see the rest of the title, but it is what?
It's a leadership playbook to help you be smarter, overcome obstacles, rise rapidly in challenging times.
There you go, right there. So don't be dumb. Again, a playbook, a workbook to help you overcome adversities and whatnot in life. So
Indeed.
all right, awesome. So, all right, now, Robert. So, get this new perspective in life. Now, tell us a bit about this origin of the 636 name.
Right. So 636 advisors came actually from, it's a legacy from my great grandfather and my grandfather. So my great grandfather didn't like the idea of being the farmer in Maine, in the coldest parts of Maine. So he decided to lie about his age and join the army, and ran off and spent 30 years in the army, including fighting in World War One and in the part of the Spanish American War in the Philippines, and lived. My grandfather was born in Panama and grew up in the Philippines, and eventually my great grandfather, when he retired, returned to Maine and became the first official chief of police for the state. And in those days, they give license numbers, and you keep the license plate numbers in the family. So his license plate number was 636. So it was just
Oh, awesome.
636, small state. And that plate is still in the family today from the 1930s, being passed from family member to family member.
There you go.
And
That's awesome.
but the connection there is he ended up in a place where he was actually investigating a bank robbery and was making progress on it, and was told by the governor, he served at the pleasure of the governor, and was told, stand down, stop the investigation. And he refused to do so. He stood his ground. He kept moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, he was relieved of his job for that. And over time, it became apparent that where other members of the administration were involved in this bank robbery, apparently. Don't want to cast aspersions here, but apparently, based off of what happened. And by the time he had lost his job, it had already been refilled, everything else, the government then gave him another job as head of like the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms that he served in for the rest of his life. But he saw it through regardless of the cost to himself, financially, career-wise, everything else. Saw it through because he knew the right thing. He didn't just back off. So that sent quite a message to me. And we've had other usage of the numbers, including my grandfather as a recruiter after World War II, using the license plate to help him achieve his goals because he didn't sound like someone from Maine because he grew up in the Philippines. So he was being very unsuccessful, but he used that, borrowed his dad's car and used that to achieve his goals and be successful in his career at that phase in the Army Air Force after World War II. So the number itself had a lot of meaning. So when it came time to found my own company after the surgery and break out on my own, 636 Advisors made a lot of sense to me. To have a lot of deep meaning of see it through regardless of the cost, keep moving forward, do what you say you're going to do, keep your word,
keep persevering.
And keep persevering. Yes, sir.
So now you've given me two examples of how exceptional your family branch is. You know, here's a mother at 9 years old praying professional for church, and now here's you say it was your grandfather, and
it's my great grandfather, and then my
grandfather,
yeah.
And you know, under legal age to get into the military, so already knowing what to do and everything, and from there, so you've got a strong branch of people that's wanting to succeed, overcome obstacles in life.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of whether it's environment or breeding, for lack of a better term, or anything else, is certainly seeing things through and doing the right thing. Is the way I was raised, is you just keep going. You do find a way through those obstacles. You don't let them get you down. It doesn't mean you're in it by yourself, but you see things through.
That's right. So now, just talking to you here in this brief few minutes, you seem to be as positive person as the next. While going through this brain tumor, were you just as positive? Because a minute ago, you're talking all the negatives of what could happen from the surgery about blindness and stuff like that. And you said, let's move on, then let's go do this. So have you always maintained this positivity? Where do you think you may have got this from?
Well, I think I've perhaps always been a little bit more of a glass half full versus half empty type of person. And moving forward, I was raised in a military family where you're constantly moving in new environments, and you can either look backwards or look forwards. And it was a whole lot better to look forwards and enjoy where you are and look forward on what's next in your life. So that certainly became a part of my life. I think it became a little difficult for others around me of, I wasn't going to wallow in this. My dad as a military physician's assistant had a phrase that I remember growing up, which was, if in doubt, cut it out, which is a very practical Army physician's assistant sort of approach. And in this case with the tumor, it wasn't getting better in there. I mean, this was the size of a small apple and had been growing for about 30 years in my head. It had to come out. So every day waiting was a day delayed. So it doesn't mean I didn't have dark moments at times. It didn't mean, middle of the night and wonder, what did I got myself into? Or you have moments when you say, why did this happen to me? I'm not going to pretend that, I'm not superhuman by any means. You have those moments. You have those regrets and wonder what could have happened, or you have those doubts, but you look forward and you move forward regardless of that. You find
That's
a way
it.
to overcome them.
Yeah. We need to focus on what's ahead and how
Hmm.
things could be in a positive. There's too many people out there that's still living in the 40 years ago. I can't do something because of,
Hmm.
10 years ago, I got a DUI. Now I can't. No, you can't because you don't want to. All right.
Right.
Get out of that past stuff. I mean, I'm not saying past is totally bad and wrong for you, because one, it shows you how far you've come in life. It gives you something to
Right.
shoot for to go ahead. Okay. But it's, when you're good or bad, Al Bundy on his show, Married with Children, he always came back with, um, when he scored 4 touchdowns in one game.
Hmm.
Always Al Bundy scored 4 touchdowns in one game.
One game.
So, so good or bad, hanging back there, it's not all that great for you when you got so much ahead of you that you can be praying for and go bigger in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's where you need to focus. I mean, I'm not ever going to present myself as I don't make mistakes. I make more mistakes by 8 a.m. than most people do all day. I've used in the book you referenced, I've used music to tie together the different chapters and different elements of songs. And you take a song from the Eagles of in the long run, kind of bent and kind of broken, but you're still standing, you're still moving forward. And that's an example of, doesn't mean I'm perfect, doesn't mean I don't make mistakes, but, try not to make the same mistake repeatedly, make new mistakes.
And Robert's referring to the book "Don't Be Dumb," and again, it's a workbook kind of to help
Mhm.
you overcome adversities. And again, I can't see the fine print, but what else, Robert? You go ahead and say it again.
It's to be smarter, overcome obstacles, rise rapidly in challenging times.
There you go.
Yeah.
And don't fool yourself. We're all going to have challenging times somewhere along the line. You may not have it like a lot of people. You may only have it, hopefully, with a blessing, very few in your life. But a lot of us, we have more than we ever anticipated. And it's finding that way to get through another day. So,
I think that's completely fair. Yes, sir.
and Nancy, she says, she's come back here now. That's a real doctor. Not to say too many
Yep.
would have done like he did. So yes, you're right about that, Nancy. Thank you.
Yeah,
And also, Nancy
that's a true
said,
statement.
"Yep," and she says, not to be rude, but she is a little jealous that who is it? Because her sister's dad is no longer, because he died from a brain tumor.
Mm.
So
I've run into so many people, and Nancy and others on. It's just it's more common than it should be, or that we would hope for. And I ended up with an instance actually with my boss at the time when I got the next assignment, suggesting that I wear a hat because of the way I looked. And I'm like, I can't. First of all,
oh
really can't wear a hat
yeah,
because I won't heal up because I'm still healing here. They've got the stitches out, but I can't wear a hat. And second of all, don't see that there's anything to be secretive about. And he's like, don't tell anybody. Just please don't tell anybody. And all
shoot,
I could tell him was, I'll take that under advisement. And I absolutely told everybody. And every individual I told that I was working with, still looking like I was healing, trust me, um, had an instance in their life where something like that had happened to them or somebody that they knew.
yeah,
Was
it's
glad of me sharing.
powerful. It's
And it was,
powerful to see what is possible, what
well,
could come. Yes.
indeed, indeed. And the last person that I told the story to actually said, you know what? We sort of wondered because we looked on Facebook or looked up on LinkedIn and we saw you and we wondered whether like you were like using Photoshop or something like that.
Hmm.
And I was like, look, I'm not, and so we're sorry that happened, but we're glad you're not a liar, is basically what the story was. It's
Hmm.
like, you'll know me well enough. I just tell the truth. So I'm not a Photoshop type of guy. I am who I am here. So,
There you go. So Nathan, I don't think it's rude to be a little jealous. I mean, because that's what life is like that. That we wish things could have been different, and
mhm,
so don't think it's being rude. So it's
no,
just a natural way it is, and so
no.
there's no. I'm not hoping, not speaking for Robert, that he's not offended. I wouldn't be offended if someone was to say something to me like that. So
No, I wouldn't at all. And quite frankly, I've since lost my mom, but she'd had a frontal temporal problem with her brain that had absolutely no relation to mine. But she's passed away in the last year. But she reached the point of a long, slow decline that you would never want something like that to happen to someone. But, you do your best with it and you try to evaluate in the individual circumstances. In her case, she wasn't showing signs of pain, but she reached the point where she knew who no one was in the family.
this
So,
what I was going to say, come back to is your boss. I would have played a little different. You would have been suing me because I've been have you out front just so you can work to tell your story to put other people, more at ease. Again, show the positive side and everything like that. What could happen and with them to look forward to get a better perspective of what's happening in life. I would have had you up front. So
yeah, it was an interesting decision or an interesting recommendation that I didn't take too kindly to tell you the truth. So
I can
it
imagine.
was.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been happy. I mean, that'd be like me in a wheelchair now because being spinal cord injured. That wherever I was working, they would say, "Yeah, you're doing a great job back in that corner.
Mm-hmm.
Away from the people. We don't want them to be afraid of someone that's in a wheelchair." And
Right.
so, yeah, so it'd be the same thing with you. Again, I would be happy that you were there and you're showing your battle wounds and how
Mm-hmm.
you overcome.
Well,
So.
and I made a great friend while I was on this assignment that the first thing she did, and I didn't tell her because she wasn't part of the smaller population. I didn't broadcast it to everybody. I would no secrets, but I didn't broadcast it. And she looked straight at me the first time she met and she said, "So what happened to you?" And I told her and she said, "Oh yeah, well, I've got a whole fake plate in my head when I had an injury when I was a kid and everything else." And, so we bonded over that we both had overcome things like that.
That's right. So, all right. Now, Robert, there was a question sent over here, and it said for me to ask about Ricky the goat.
Ricky the goat. Yes. This is an early story from a very influential mentor and boss in my career when I was late 20s, working my way through. And I found my way into finance. So I worked in finance jobs for a number of years before I started doing consulting for a good long time. And, but, as I talked about making mistakes, one mistake I had was I was a little too zippy and wanted to do things really quick. And with a spreadsheet, would hard code numbers in rather than use a formula. So you have a formula. So if something changes, then it ripples through and all the changes happen the way they should. And if you hard code something, you blow up the formulas. And if you change something in a spreadsheet, the changes don't work right, which is a big deal when you're reporting financial numbers for big companies. To have that, you shouldn't do that. Let's put it that way.
There you go.
So I had a boss that had been patient with me and told me several times. He was about 20 years older than me. And he was, you'd think he was a Texan from the way he spoke and everything else. But it was one of those, he wasn't a Texan, but got there as soon as he could and was good for telling stories and getting his point across. And he says, "So did I ever tell you about Ricky the goat?" And I'm like, "Where is this coming from?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think you have." And he says, "Okay, well, let me tell you. There was this goat named Ricky that I had when I was a kid." And I'm like, "Okay." And he says, "And Ricky liked to get with the girl goats. He liked to have interactions with the girl goats." I'm like, "Okay." And in my head, I'm going, don't know where this is going, but okay, I'll play along.
What you got to do by numbers.
And every time he's jumping the fence, he's getting with those girl goats, and we're trying everything we could to fence higher, and he's still getting with them. Finally, we put him on a chain, and we put barbed wire at the top of the fence. We put him on a chain to keep him out from those girl goats. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, don't know where this was going, but okay, I'm listening. And he said, and then I got home from school one day, and I tell you, that Ricky the goat, he'd gotten that chain stretched just so much, they'd gotten up and started leaping the fence anyway, but got caught by his private parts on that barbed wire.
Oh, no.
I'm like, oh, boy, that's not good. And he looked at me right in the eye and he says, "And if you hard code numbers one more time, you're going to be just like Ricky."
And
that was the last day I hard coded something into
there you go.
to a spreadsheet. He got
Nice.
through my thick skull with the story, and a little bit of sense of humor, but and maybe a little bit of a threat, maybe just a little bit.
Maybe, yeah.
Um,
So
but he got through to me in a way, and he found a different way to get through to me, regardless of just telling me. But painted a picture that I didn't want any part of that picture,
that's right.
and he got my attention with it in a creative way. So,
Well, and you know, those things. There's more than 10,000 ways to skin a cat.
there most certainly
You
are.
know, yeah, he could have took a different approach, which may not have been as effective on you.
Well, when it certainly wasn't traditional, write you up for it, or take you down to human resources. It was a different way of getting his point across, but he certainly got it across.
There you go. Different times then, so I don't know.
Different times then. I don't know that you could definitely.
Today.
Yeah, I definitely have my point in the book of HR tips that HR professionals might not approve of. So, it's one of those, use your judgment on what you can and can't say and how you handle yourself. But
now your book is not out for ready to buy yet, is it?
No, it's getting close. We're aiming at an October 14th date for it to be out.
Because I love what you talked about using music and songs to I guess chapter titled somehow with your books, and
yes,
I think it'd be interesting how you did that.
Yeah, it was an interesting balance of finding the right stories for the right things that would connect. So, finding different ways. Like I used one piece at a time to reference, from the old Johnny Cash song of finding a way to get what you wanted, not to advocate stealing.
Now you're coming to my hometown, Johnny Cash. He just lived up the road from where I lived.
Well, there you go. But not advocating stealing car parts from the auto manufacturer, but of finding a way to get what you want. And so I put that as the beginning of a chapter of finding a way of what your path is to get what you want, and use that as a setting. David Allan Coe used an element from David Allan Coe to talk about the best half concert that I've ever been to, when I actually got to go see him, and then a brawl broke out and police dogs came in and all sorts of craziness ensued.
No.
But great half a concert. Best half concert I've ever been to. It's fantastic. But nobody got hurt out of it. It's all right. So, but tried to set up the tone of, people knowing your name. You never even knew my name type of thing. And how do you get yourself known? And so set up that way in several different chapters, and got creative with some different things. And
it's very creative, tying in, especially for older listeners that knows these songs. And so, to pique their interest, to keep reading. So that's very creative.
Well, it was interesting. I've heard from younger generations that they've used the word eclectic because the songs from sort of all over the place, and different genres and different types that they might not have ever heard of. And they're interested too in that of, like, I never heard of this person before. I never heard of this artist. And what's this about? And so that's sort of been interesting.
I think it's so funny watching these teenagers walking around with Kiss or Queen or Pink Floyd, their shirts. And I'm going, you're only wearing this stuff because you found it in your mama's and your dad's old dresser drawer somewhere. And then you go and listen to some old cassettes they got laying around and realize what real good music is, from back then.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I had a conversation with a guy that works for me earlier today of two of the founding members of Journey, which, one of my favorite bands that I got into and then went backwards in time, and discovering that two of them came from Santana, and that one of them had even played at Woodstock with Santana. I mean, how far back in the roots of music this was. All of that's completely lost on folks today.
Oh, yeah. So, hey, Robert, hey, appreciate you being here and sharing your story and your journey and everything. If you could go ahead and tell us how to come about your book when it comes out, and your other social media, how people can get hold of you, go ahead and hit us with it.
Absolutely. So my main website is 636advisors with an O.com. And we have a place to fill in information to get a discount code for the book on that website. So that's probably the fastest and easiest way to get a hold hold of me that way, as well as my email address is on that and everything else, and phone number. So happy to be reached that way. Facebook is also 636 Advisors, but also can be reached on individually with Robert Towle on that, and find me that way, and as well as on LinkedIn. So that's all up and running. In the process, we're within a day or so of being up, is don'tbedumb.expert for a new website that's just going to outline more focused on the book, which also, but if folks we can get them a discount on the book that'll be available on Amazon and other sites coming up in the next coming months, and looking to get any early reviews of the book. We could do a digital copy here shortly for folks in advance, and to give folks a chance to read it and offer a review on day one, which would be fantastic. So very open to different ways. And the other thing is also have got out a Spotify list that we can get to folks of the songs in the book that we can send to folks so they can listen to the mix of songs.
There you go. So, all right. And I'll try to catch you on these links and get them in the description as well for people to be able to pop in. And as your book is coming out, if you could just email to me so I can update everything. So I can update everything to keep you up for everybody else. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we are on track. I will give an example here, James, of overcoming obstacles. We had I have my proof copy, which, given the mistakes that are in this, is going to be worth a lot of money one of these days. I'm going to hang on to this one. But somehow we revised the copy and everything else, and this is different than what you showed the digital copy that we know it was on there.
That's right.
But they left off the word "be" in "Don't Be Dumb." And somehow, in getting it to the right template, this is why you do a proof copy, and you have mistakes and you overcome obstacles. This was the big mistake in the whole book, is a missing word on the front cover, the word "be." It was there on the spine, there on the back, but
not on
in the
front.
process again, not on the front for some reason. So, became sort of a Neanderthal version of the book of "Don't Dumb." So
don't dumb. That's right. So, well, Robert, I appreciate you again coming on, sharing your message, sharing your journey, valuable time here for us, and giving us something to look at and provide some hope for the next person on not giving up, persevering. I mean, you're a remarkable example of perseverance.
Thank you so much.
So, hey, now, Robert, you know that there's people out there hurting and struggling today. And if you can just take here and give us a positive message to help people get through today, that would be awesome.
I'd be happy to. It's actually, I'm going to steal from my parents. I think they'd be all right with that. But they, moving frequently, and when you didn't necessarily plan to, they always did a fantastic job of looking forward to the next step and what the future held. And I think it's very easy for us to wallow and think about where we're at and not enjoy it. But they always would look forward to. So if we were someplace, it wasn't where did we used to be that we might have loved. We loved the places we lived. But it wasn't look backwards to, oh, I wish I were back here. And it was embedded enough in me that standing there in the Alps in Switzerland as a kid, and you're looking out over this beautiful views, and somebody next to me is saying, oh, but I wish I was back in the green grass of Kentucky. I was young, and nothing wrong against Kentucky. It's beautiful there. But I looked over like, are you not seeing what we're seeing here? I haven't yet been back to Switzerland since that time, but we'll always remember that view and enjoying that. And it was like, you're going to go back to Kentucky. Enjoy Kentucky when you're in Kentucky. Right now, you're here. Enjoy this. Find the good in where you're at now. And no matter how dark it is, or you might be away from family like we were, or no telephone service or anything like that for years of contact with family members, there was still a lot of positive. And I think if you look for it, you can find something to hang on to for that next step. And I'd encourage people to take that view of life, especially when it's easy to get into the worst side of things. There's always darkness. There's always bad sides of things. But look at what those nuggets of what is good and what can drive you forward.
And then find those nuggets, what is good, and squeeze them and hang on to them. And Absolutely. Then it's going to get even better as time goes on. So
that's fair. Absolutely.
Hey, Robert, thank you again. Nancy, thank you for coming in. Anybody's coming in on the replay, hey, be sure to share us out with someone. Again, you don't have to have a brain tumor and going through all that or a spinal cord injury. The message of overcoming adversity and giving some hope for someone is still the same. If I can do anything to help you, you go to my website, professorofperseverance.com. If you go down a little bit there, you'll see there's a free mini course with a ebook free, and it's Your Past Doesn't Have a Future, but You Do. So go ahead and get your copy of that free. Everyone else do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.